Gregory party is very near to their home port at last. Captain Bradford is standing in the bow of the small boat with which Johnson rescued them, talking to Johnson as they thread their way carefully through the small shipping of the outer basin. In the stern, Mrs. Gregory, Joan, and Jerry are talking as the boat glides into the harbor under sail. It is just before midnight of a very dark night. The harbor is unusually quiet as the small boat drifts easily before a 5-mile wind.
Oh, but, Joan, I don't see how anything can happen to us now. Oh, we're nearly home.
We are some few miles from our anchorage, and then a drive by motor of more than 20 miles, you said.
That's right, Joan. But surely the danger is past now.
I am not so sure of that.
Oh, forget it, Joan. You act like these Euclideans could do just as they please all over the world. We got away from them, didn't we?
We did.
Then all their smart science and inventions didn't do them so much good after all.
You seem to forget that it was in a Euclidean submarine we made our escape, and our present safety is due to the perfection of Euclidean devices, which made it possible to leave that submarine far below the surface and rise to this boat.
Of course you're right, Joan. Euclideans are very clever, but after all, they can't always win.
You bet they can't. And 2 hours from now, we'll be safe at Mrs. Gregory's home.
I am anxious to see your home, Mother.
Your home, Joan, dear.
Yeah, and I'd kind of like to see my dad. Gee, you know, we've been going 3 months now, and I haven't had a chance to even send him a postcard.
Well, I think you will find that Johnson has kept your father informed of our doings, Jerry.
I sure hope Dad doesn't know all that's happened to us, or he'd be plenty worried.
There is something very strange to me in that sensation you describe as worry. Until you came to Euclidia, I had never heard the word used. Now I understand what it means, and I am beginning to learn how to worry.
Well, why bother to learn to worry? Gosh, most people do plenty of that without even trying to.
Joan is struggling to understand our way of living, Jerry.
I think I may like it after I'm familiar with it.
Oh, Mrs. Gregory.
Yes, Jerry?
May I take Joan out and show her Hollywood Boulevard right away?
Well, hardly tonight, Jerry. It'll be nearly morning by the time we arrive at home, and you must hurry to see your father first.
Oh, sure. I meant tomorrow night.
Well, we'll see how things work out.
What is Hollywood Boulevard, Mother?
That's where you see all the moving picture stars.
Moving picture stars?
Hollywood Boulevard, Joan, dear, is a street that wants a bit of knowing and sometimes a great deal of understanding. But you'll enjoy it as you see it with Jerry.
I want to see the ladies' garments in the stores you have told me of, Mother.
Now, there's a job for you, Jerry. Take Joan around while she window shops in all the stores.
Oh, no, nothing doing. I'm not going to waste a lot of my time standing around while some girl looks at a lot of funny hats and dresses.
Well, I'll spare you that.
What is window shopping?
Gee whiz, Joan. I don't see how you ever got to be 15 years old and not learn anything.
Now, Jerry, Joan knows a great many things, even though they do constitute a strange education for our world.
Strange is right. Hey, Johnson and Tex are coming back here.
Yes, and they appear to be watching something in the sky.
Probably that Euclidean plane.
Oh, that plane. I had forgotten it.
Oh, so had I. But it looks like we're going to get a swell chance to remember.
I'd say it was the same plane, but I want to ask Joan.
What is it, Captain?
Johnson and I just discovered that there's a plane flying around over us.
Too dark to see it, and they're not showing any lights. But I thought I heard them cruising around with a very quiet motor some time ago.
Oh, but those Euclidean planes don't sound the same as ours, do they, Joan?
In this case, they would.
In this case?
Oh, sure. You don't know these Euclideans like we do. They think nothing of carrying 2 kinds of engines in a plane.
How about that, Joan?
This plane is undoubtedly equipped with an ordinary motor, so they will excite no suspicion when heard cruising around over the harbor.
Well, I should think the fact that they're running without lights would excite plenty of suspicion.
Yes, it will, but no one will know what to do about it.
Well, what do you suppose they're flying around over here for?
Well, I would say some attempt would be made to prevent our landing.
When these fellows make attempts, it's usually a pretty good try.
I think we are in no immediate danger.
Joan feels that the Euclideans are not going to do us any bodily harm, but we've seen so much of their power that it's rather hard to believe anything particularly nice about them.
Well, one thing is certain. With this harbor all full of battleships and a carrier in there with a lot of planes on it, they're certainly not going to resort to any firing or bomb dropping.
The Euclideans have many weapons that are practically noiseless.
Well, that plane isn't noiseless by a long shot. I can hear it coming back in right now.
They will attempt to frighten us, I believe.
Well, they won't have to try very hard for me. I scare easy when those Euclideans are around.
That plane is coming down awfully fast.
Yes, it's coming right over us.
Sounds like a power dive.
And I'll bet there'll be a bomb at the bottom of it.
Oh, what can we do?
Nothing. Just sit still and wait for what happens.
Whew. Well, they didn't hit us.
They didn't try to hit us.
They dropped something just as the plane passed over us, though. I'm sure of that.
Yes. I thought I heard something hit the water.
Have no fear. If they were using bombs, it would be only the magnetic type.
Got any metal on this boat, Johnson?
Not unless you brought it along with you. I even ripped out a small capstan head forward.
Well, then we can keep moving. But if there's one little piece of metal on this boat, we'll stay right here.
Johnson, your anchor.
We have no anchor, Mrs. Gregory.
You are very thorough, Mr. Johnson.
It pays to be thorough in this sort of business.
Well, we seem to be going smoothly along, and nothing's happening.
Yep. But those fellows from the Magic Island fool you. Just when you think you've seen the whole show, they dig out one more trick.
Well, they must have dug one out then. Here they come back to try it out on us.
Sorry we haven't any protection on this little boat.
Oh, don't worry about that, Johnson. A battleship doesn't carry enough protection to save it from a Euclidean plane if they're attacking in earnest.
I would suggest we all sit perfectly still, make no move as the plane goes over, and concentrate on trying to discover their purpose in these repeated dives.
That's right, Jones. Now, everybody sit still with your eyes wide open.
Hey, it's raining.
Sure feels like it.
The cooling system in that plane must be leaking. I felt a fine, heavy spray, slightly warm as they passed over us.
Well, I'd say that wasn't accidental. They managed to cover us pretty thoroughly with it. And my clothing feels wet all over.
Yeah, my sleeves are... Say, well, that's funny.
What, Jerry?
My sleeves were wet, soaking wet, and now they're dry.
Why, you're right, Jerry.
They have used a chemical of some kind with which to spray this boat.
Well, what for, Jones?
The reason is not apparent to me as yet.
It can't be anything very destructive. It didn't burn where it touched the skin.
And it doesn't seem to be affecting the fabric of our clothing.
If we could only smell the blame stuff, we might get an idea.
Euclideans are far too clever to allow an odor to identify any of their preparations.
Well, whatever this stuff is, I'll bet we find out a lot about it mighty quick. Look, that plane's coming back.
What can they do to us?
Anything they take a notion to, I guess.
I believe I understand the purpose of this liquid spray now.
Well, what is it, Jones?
I will not tell you.
Oh, but Joan...
No, Mother. If the effect will be as I think, you might do something foolish in attempting to escape from it when our greatest safety lies in doing nothing.
Well, I hope you know best, Jones. Here he comes.
Boy. Oh. Well, whatever you thought it was, Joan, you're wrong. He didn't do a blame thing to us.
Have you tried to move your hands?
Move our hands? Why, say, what is this?
Magnetism again.
Tex, I'm absolutely powerless. I can't move at all.
They sprayed us with that magnetic paint of theirs.
Precisely.
And this last time he dropped magnetic bombs all around us.
We had plenty of this sort of treatment on that island.
Well, tell me, how lasting is the effect?
That will depend on how many bombs were dropped in the water near us and what materials the bomb casings are made of. You will observe that the boat is no longer making any progress.
Oh, you're right, Joan. We're standing still, except for a little drift with the tide.
And we'll stand here until the solution from those bombs becomes so diluted in the water that it won't hold us?
Correct, Captain.
Well, that won't take long, will it, Joan?
I believe the pilot of that plane may have arranged that it will take several hours.
Several hours? Why, Joan, dear, that magnetic solution can't possibly stand up in water that long.
You would be right, Mother, if the solution was all formed at once. But I imagine some of those bombs were made to float and dissolve at certain intervals, continually generating fresh magnetism on their contact with the salt water.
Then, if that's the case, we may be here all night?
At least we may be here long enough for the submarine we left magnetized to free itself and come up after us.
Well, you mean to tell me that all we can do is just sit around here like a bunch of statues and let this boat drift around with us?
That is all.
Well, Now I'm beginning to understand something of what you've all been through on that island.
Oh, we sure had plenty of weird things happen to us.
Look, that plane seems to be on his way now.
Yes. I can't hear it anymore. He must be going back to Euclidia.
I think that is correct.
But how do they refuel those things?
They don't much. We've learned a lot of things, Johnson. One of them is that we don't know anything about fuel or how to use it.
We'll get our hands on all those formulas when we go back to the Magic Island.
I'm not at all sure I want to go back, Jerry. Sometimes I feel that Euclidia is a very fascinating place, and at other times I hate it. Just now, I'm not very kindly disposed toward G47 and his men.
Oh, yes, his men. How about this fellow Thales? What did you finally do to get rid of him, Johnson?
I've never seen him.
Never seen him?
No, Mrs. Gregory.
Then you were right, Tex. That radio was wrecked by remote control.
Johnson, did you find your set burned up or melted down?
Both. Some highly caustic chemical was suspended near every vital part of the set. When I used it to warn you, it simply flowed over everything and put the set out of business.
But you mean to say, Johnson, you have no idea where Thales is or what he looks like?
No, not the slightest.
I have seen him on Euclidia. I would recognize him if I saw him again, I believe.
I hope you get a chance to point him out to me.
Oh, Tex, look.
What, Pat?
Well, that boat. See that big shadow off the port bow?
Gee, it's a great big oil tanker.
And he's bearing right down on us.
We are helpless.
None of us can make a move. They'll never turn that big boat in time.
Can't blame them. We haven't any lights, and I painted the sails black so we wouldn't be seen.
Tex, he's going to run us down.
We'll sure get it in a minute.
And we can't swim with this magnetic plate
Worse
on us.
than that, we will sink immediately.
He's almost on top of us.
When the small boat carrying Johnson and the Gregory party was run down by an oil tanker, things looked bad for our friends. Covered with magnetic paint, which had been sprayed on them from a Euclidean plane, all were powerless to help themselves in any way, and the little boat was badly smashed, throwing them into the water. However, they were all prepared as to what to do. As the boat broke up, each member of the party managed to get some part of their bodies across or on a piece of the boat, and the tanker put about at once and picked them up. Jerry, Captain Bradford, and Johnson are in the ship's radio cabin, while we find Mrs. Gregory and Joan wrapped in dry blankets in the captain's cabin.
Well, Joan, my dear, it seems to be a little hard for your mother to land in her own country.
Our progress has been rather erratic, Mother, but I feel we have done well to accomplish so much against the opposition of G47 and his Euclideans.
I agree with you. Escape certainly wasn't easy. But at last we're home, or nearly so.
This oil boat we are now on, is it taking us into the harbor?
Yes, Joan. Tex explained to the captain that there were a number of reasons why we didn't want to send in for a water taxi or a harbor patrol boat to come out after us.
There are many things I cannot understand about your world and the great secrecy with which you surround the most commonplace things. But one thing I like very much.
And what is that, dear?
Everyone seems so kind, so willing to aid everyone else. Your personal comfort means a great deal. Here we are on a strange boat. We did not know the captain. He did not know us. And he was out of the harbor on the beginning of a long cruise. Yet he is returning us safely to the landing.
Why, of course, dear. His boat ran into us, didn't it?
Which was entirely our fault.
Well, granted, but common courtesy on the high seas would demand that he take us to a place of safety.
And the captain allows us to use his own cabin. We are given his warm blankets to keep us dry and comfortable.
You have lived in a hard, cruel atmosphere, Joan.
I did not know that until you came and told me of another manner of life. You are showing me many nice things, Mother.
And you are showing us some nice things, Joan. Just the everyday, commonplace things that we have so many of in our world, and which are really very precious privileges, for which we forget to appreciate. You're teaching me a new respect for the comforts in my world.
And Mr. Johnson, he is so obviously a gentleman, and yet he guards your interests as closely as if he were in your employ.
Well, Johnson is, in a sense, an employee, but he was Captain Bradford's first sergeant in the war, and he's been with me for 14 years. Johnson is almost one of my family.
Mother, what does rich mean?
Rich? Well, don't you know that simple word, Joan?
I know what it means to the scientists. They often speak of some mineral or metal being rich in certain properties. But I think there must be another meaning.
Well, what are you trying to figure out, dear?
Well, I am not sure. But Jerry once told me that you were a very rich woman. Does that mean you are rich in mineral properties or rich in food value?
Well, not exactly, Joan. In our world, we frequently refer to people who have a great deal of money and may enjoy most of the world's pleasures as rich or wealthy people.
Then you are rich, are you not, Mother?
Why, yes, Joan, I suppose I am, though I've never given it much thought. You see, money doesn't mean a great deal when you've always had it, but it means life itself to those who are not so fortunate.
I would not like to make you less rich, Mother. Yet I would enjoy seeing something of those large stores Jerry tells me of, and I would like some dresses such as you wear. Jerry tells me your garments are very expensive. Would your riches suffer badly if I were to have some dresses like yours?
Oh, well, of course not. You dear, silly little girl. You'll have lots of dresses and anything else you want when we get settled at home.
Jerry has a bicycle. He told me about it. May I have a bicycle?
Why, of course you may. Anything within reason.
What is a bicycle, Mother?
Oh, you'll see when the time comes.
When does the time come?
Joan, you act as if you were about 5 years old or even younger than that. But, of course, you can't understand all the things Jerry talks about, such as bicycles and picture stars.
I will be very ignorant in your world, Mother.
Why, Joan, dear, you won't be anything of the kind.
Oh, yes, I will. You were very ignorant when you came to the islands.
Oh, well, Yes, I suppose we were, from your point of view.
Euclidia was no more strange to you than your world will be to me.
And we'll try to remember that, Joan, and be very patient with you in making all our explanations. Come in.
It is Jerry.
You bet it's Jerry. Jerry on the job.
Well, come in and close the door and tell us what Tex and Johnson are doing.
Oh, they're doing swell.
Well, are we nearly to the pier?
About 10 minutes now, and we'll step off on dry land.
Oh, Joan, we're almost home.
I will be very glad to see your home, our home.
Boy, I'll sure be glad to see mine, too. And Dad'll be some surprised to see me.
He must have been very lonesome without you, Jerry.
Oh, he'll get over that fast enough. When I start asking him a million questions why he's trying to work.
I should think your father would become very tired of you, Jerry.
You what?
Why, Joan, that's a strange thing to say to Jerry.
It sure is.
I mean that if Jerry speaks as much and says as little as he does when talking to me, it would not be deeply interesting to his father.
Well, I like that.
Oh, now, Jerry, remember that Joan hasn't learned what our family relationships mean to us, and she can't possibly realize that your father would be interested in every word you said, whether it was about this trip or one of your hobbies or anything else.
I do not know many of your customs, Mother.
Oh, you'll learn very fast, Joan. Now, suppose we put aside our exchange of educations for a few moments and talk about our present situation. Jerry, just what is the captain doing? Captain Bradford, I mean.
Oh, he and Johnson are with the skipper of this oil tanker. Boy, oh boy, and they're sure making that radio work overtime.
They are calling to stations on land?
Well, I'll say they are, calling everything that will answer.
But isn't that dangerous, Jerry?
Dangerous?
In what way, Joan, dear?
To the captain's plans. He wanted to preserve an air of absolute secrecy about our landing, and I agreed with him that it was advisable. Now Jerry says the news is being thrown open to all radio stations.
Hey, I didn't say that.
Well, that's the impression you gave, Jerry.
Well, I didn't get a chance to finish what I started to say. Tex is sending plenty of messages, all right, and some of the land stations are getting them. But he's not telling them the right story.
You mean Tex isn't telling them we've been rescued?
Not by a long ways he isn't. He's telling them that we're on a tramp steamer, 300 miles out, and that we won't be in here for a couple of days yet.
That would be a very clever story if it were not for the fact that your land stations will be able to localize those messages and know exactly where they are coming from.
I don't believe we need to fear that, Joan. You see, there aren't a dozen stations in the country with equipment to do that, well, even possibly well. And Tex is staying away from those stations. You can be very, very sure of that.
I should think that would be advisable.
And that's just what he's doing. The only stations they're talking to and the only wavelengths they're using are a lot of hams the captain knows. They'll pass the story out just as they get it, and nobody be any wiser.
And if that story is generally circulated, we should have a good many hours of privacy before any of the Euclidean agents discover that we're in town.
Say, that's an idea. And those hams will be excited over the story enough that they won't be worrying about where it came from.
What is a ham, Jerry?
Huh? A ham?
Yes, what do you mean by a ham?
Oh, a ham is an amateur radio operator. A fellow who has a radio station of his own and works it just because he likes to.
That is interesting. Are there many hams?
Oh, thousands of them.
Oh, yes. Jerry is a ham, aren't you?
You bet I am. You see, my dad and I have got one of the best sets in Southern California.
Come in.
Oh, come on in, Tex, and join the powwow.
I'll do that. It looks like a powwow at that, with you two all wrapped up in blankets.
Well, now, Captain Bradford, we're warm and dry and comfortable, and our Indian appearance isn't bothering us one little bit.
I say, as far as I'm concerned, you look fine.
Sure do to me. Oh, what'd you find out?
I think my story got over all right.
No one suspects we're landing from this boat?
Not a soul.
How will we go ashore without being observed, Captain?
Well, the captain's taking care of that. He's really got more supplies on board than he needs. And the men who helped load the stores, they'll remember that. So there won't be any suspicion aroused when the captain says he picked up some stuff by mistake. And as it looks like large cases in which most anything might be contained, he's just going to drop a few cases back on the pier. And we'll be in them.
You don't mean we'll be in the cases?
Right, and we won't get hurt.
That should not be difficult.
Well, I wasn't thinking of the difficulty of landing in those cases. But, Tex, what about the rescue? Well, surely someone in the harbor must have heard that crash and knows about this boat running us down.
Yeah. Say, I forgot about that. What are they going to say to the captain when he comes in without any survivors from that wreck?
And after all, Tex, the packing case thing isn't much of an excuse for turning an ocean-going tanker around when he's out in the open channel.
That's all taken care of. Johnson will be the survivor. In fact, the only survivor. And as Johnson went out alone on that boat, it's going to look perfectly all right for him to be rescued alone, isn't it?
Gee, that's smart.
Why, it certainly is. Johnson is a survivor, just as he should be.
That is a very clever plan, Captain Bradford. You are indeed the most resourceful man I have ever known.
Aha, flowers for you, Tex.
And thank you, Joan. But I can't take the credit for that. Johnson thought that one up.
You sure did a good job.
Now, Jerry, look, I want you to run along up and see what you can do to help Johnson and the skipper. I'll join you in a minute and give Pat and Joan a chance to dress.
Okay, Tex. I'll see what goes on. Hey, don't be long. You know, we're mighty near the pier.
Right, Jerry.
You'd better get out of here, too, Tex. If we're that near the pier, Joan and I had better be dressing.
Yes, I know that, but I want to get Jerry out of here long enough to tell you something I didn't want him to hear.
Oh, yes, Tex?
Is there any trouble, Captain?
No, Joan, just something to smooth out.
Oh, what is it, Tex?
Well, one of the amateur radio operators I talked to, and thank heavens it was after Jerry came back here, was Jerry's dad.
Jerry's father? Oh, how wonderful, Tex. Then he knows Jerry's safe.
Yes, on the contrary, he thinks Jerry's on the high seas, still in danger.
Oh, of course, your message. But what a shame to worry him like that.
Well, I didn't dare tell him the truth. Anyone could have heard it.
But that should be a simple matter. We will be in Los Angeles soon, will we not?
In about an hour.
Then Jerry's father will know he is safe in an hour.
Well, that won't be so bad, Tex. After waiting all this time.
Oh, I know that part of it, but I just wanted to ask you if you'd phone Jerry's dad as soon as we land and sort of break it to him gently. Might be quite a shock if he runs in on his father and, well, I can't do those things.
Don't worry, Tex. I'll break it gently.
Hey, hurry up. We're there right now.
Oh, Joan, Tex, we're home, safe and sound.